in the context of twins flames universe, it is a form of control. You know, make sure the people that are in your universe tell you every little thread so that you can coach them on every single thread, so that it can line up to the narrative that you want them to be a part of, so that they feel that intimate and connected with you. Because as soon as you talk about things like that, like, you immediately are bonded with that person. Like, the deeper and more intimate things you talk about with someone, you create bonds, right? It doesn't matter what it is. The more you open up, it's there. So, and these two are like already in this position to be like, they've created like this pedestal for themselves. So it's just creating more of that like weird dynamic. Like, I don't know, like, I just get like such Stockholm syndrome vibes from the whole thing. Today we have a really wild conversation to go into, and yeah, we have a lot to cover. I feel like we have a lot we want to riff on, we have a lot we want to go into, we have a lot we want to pick apart. So to preface this episode specifically, Kasey and I, we recently watched on Netflix a really wild, I guess, docu-series called Escaping Twin Flames. Is there Escaping Twin Flames universe? Which one is it?
I think it's Escaping Twin Flames.
Yeah, Escaping Twin Flames. And we have a lot we want to go into because we have our own personal experiences with these quote unquote twin flames teachings and what's true about it, what's not true, like what it is, yada yada. We have a lot we want to cover. And this entire docuseries is just wild. Wild.
Yeah, I remember like I started to watch it and like I was telling you the first episode, I was like, oh, okay, like this isn't so bad. Like it's a little weird, right? There were some things that were a little off, but you know, it didn't seem terrible. And then you get deeper into it and it just gets like worse and worse and worse until you're just like, holy fuck, like this is insane. And it's funny because like I have my own like story with the twin flame. I literally at one point like thought I was like had met my twin flame, and this was years ago in my early 20s. I was very new to like, you know, the spiritual world and things like that. So yeah, it's just funny to like look back on my own experience and then watch this and just be like, yep, that is pretty accurate.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I remember I've never really been into the whole twin flame thing. However, when you actually start to like go into like whatever teachings, if you were to Google it, and like, I don't remember what some of the shit says, but some of it'll be like, you know, you can't stop thinking about them, you know, you can't live without them, like just these like feelings and sensations.
Intense chemistry is one. The runner chaser dynamic, which is like that back and forth kind of like toxic dynamic, is like the like a defining thing in the twin flame relationship is another one too.
Right. Yeah. And once you start to understand, you know, trauma and sexual attraction and just these really, you know, basic concepts that happen with our hormones and just our pain body, you realize that they're basically describing a trauma bond, or just really intense sexual polarity, which I just want to preface is not like the be all end all for any relationship. Sexual polarity can be created from even a complete stranger. It's literally just the two opposites meeting, and it just creates that intense attraction because it's quite literally opposites. They're like two magnets that polarize together so strongly. And so having the understanding of these things will help you when you do feel really, really intense emotions and feelings and sensations in your body, and you can make more of an educated, discerning um, guess.
Yeah, the knowledge, having the knowledge around a trauma bond is so important because like I said, when I was, you know, believed that I was like in the twin flame relationship, that was actually my first experience with a trauma bond.
Right.
And I've gone through like cycles of that, like continuing to have to like learn that lesson until you really do get it. But that one was the first and it was the most intense. So when you have no knowledge of it, when you don't know what's going on, you just, you know, you think that you're like, oh my God, I'm so in love, right? And then you start to look at, you know, being in the spiritual world, of course, you'd heard the concept of like twin flames, right? So you start to look at it, and the dynamics of a twin flame relationship when you look at it online is a trauma bond.
Yeah.
Like it's the same thing. It's just like they label it differently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they spice it up with spiritual jargon,
Yeah.
right? And for someone that is already experiencing a lot of trauma or heartache or just pain and suffering in their life, they're already looking for a means to escape that. There's already this understanding of like, oh my God, I don't even want to be in this life. So anything that'll, beautify it in some kind of way, um, you will gravitate to that. And I was sharing a little bit before that it's like a moth to the twin flame.
That's the title of this episode.
And yeah, and I don't mean to laugh at anyone that's kind of experiencing this because it is really intense. And I feel like you and I would know, we both kind of have our own experiences. I mean, not so much with twin flame, but absolutely with, being trauma bonded with really, really intense relationships. So, if you'd like to share a little bit about your own twin flame experience, just kind of more like speaking to how it felt and kind of like maybe the information you were reading at that time.
Yeah, so I had met this person online. Pretty seemed pretty normal, like pretty standard. But the moment that I first like saw him in person, I like my heart just like exploded. I was just like full body reaction. My brain stopped working. Like I couldn't focus. I couldn't talk. Yeah, I just like blank, right? And I just remember thinking like you have that reaction and oh my god, this is the one, right? Because I had that really really intense physical reaction. And there was like really sexual attraction was there at that point. He was like probably one of the best looking guys I had ever dated. He was, the sex was really good up to that point. That was probably like the best sex I'd ever had. So you see all of these things and you're like, oh my god, like this is it, this is the one, he's my twin flame. But the dynamic between us was incredibly incredibly toxic. So it was very much like he would give me just enough like love and affection to kind of like keep me coming back, and then he would like pull away or like push me away or kind of like treat me like shit and then do it again, right? And then it would just enough to keep me like coming back like that. So it was really toxic in that sense. And being someone who did at the time like have, relationship issues and like trauma and stuff like that, it just mimicked to me a relationship that I had had with like a parent. Yeah. So going back to like the trauma bond thing, like that's where the trauma bond was coming from, because you're trying to get the love that you never received as a child. And then, yeah, so it was just like the initial physical reaction was really intense. The dynamic was very toxic. And then it ended when he just like up and moved because he was in the military. So again, that like perpetuates like abandonment issues, of course, which I had as well. So really at the end of the day, this super toxic like trauma bond, quote unquote twin flame relationship that I was experiencing was just mirroring back to me my own trauma, right? It was like it's coming up because you have to heal it kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anytime something is super activating, it's like a reminder, like, hey, this still lives in me. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. Time to heal.
What do you want to do about it? Yeah. And yeah, so when I started watching this, Escaping Twin Flames, and I know in the beginning, anyways, the first little bit of the first episode, I was like, oh, this really isn't that bad. Because it was kind of just speaking to, like 90% or maybe 80 to 90% of a lot of the spiritual relationship coaches and like businesses that are kind of existing right now online. The ones that I see anyways, they're all very similar. And I was like, oh yeah, like this is, like this is just like, it's Netflix. Like this is just going through the lens of like a family that, is just worried about their daughter or son or whoever, right? And so yeah, I was like, whatever, but I'm curious because like it's like number one watched in Netflix right now or something. And also myself having, a bit of a relationship coach. I don't really explicitly call myself a relationship coach, but I do kind of fall into that category. It's like, oh, okay, what's going on out there, right? And it just, like we said, it keeps progressively going darker. So I want us to kind of like go through. I know I made it. I know we're very unscripted here, but we did make a little few points so we can kind of stay on track and make sure we cover everything because there was just so much. I remember watching this and I progressively, like, I was crying at one point. I was just like, my heart was breaking. I also do want to put a disclaimer. Anytime we watch shows or the media or news or anything like that, it's super important to have like the goggles of discernment. I remember prefacing that to you when I told you I was watching. I was like, make sure you have your goggles and discernment on. And I say this because there's always some type of narrative that's looking to be pushed, whether it be a Netflix documentary series, whether it be the news, whatever it is we're watching. Even our podcast, we may unconsciously have some sort of narrative. So that's why I'm like always kind of like, oh, what do I mean? What do I mean? I'm always doing that to myself even because, or am I living through ego? Am I living through my heart? Right? Like that's really the two lenses we have. So um just having your goggles of discernment on. And the reason why I say that, because as I was watching this, the people that they're interviewing um mainly are the family members of the people that went into this twin flame universe. And of course they're going to be upset. Of course they're going to have like conviction of wanting their daughter back or wanting their sister back or whoever. All 100%, like I'm totally like yes that. But in the same time, when you come from like that lens of conviction, um you get your emotional you get your anger and you get your pain kind of distorting your lens. So and then then I'm just trying to tune into when I'm watching this, like, oh, okay, so if that's who is mainly being interviewed, how much of what's being said on Netflix is true? Or not even just true, but like how much is it being um like emphasized to make the show more entertaining? So that was kind of what I was kind of doing in the beginning because I'm like, oh, like they're just saying, like they want to find true love. Like that's fair to say, right? That's something fair to want to offer someone if you're a relationship coach, like helping someone be in a healthy relationship. But then it kept getting darker.
Yeah, one thing in the beginning that I specifically made me think like, oh, like this isn't so bad or whatever is the mirror exercise.
Right.
So
Yes.
that came up in like the first episode, and it was like when you're upset about something, when you're angry, just like mirror it, right? So that entails just essentially like turning it back on yourself, saying like going inside and saying, okay, why am I angry right now? Like, why am I reacting like this? Where is this coming from within me? And that's like a super common thing that, and you do that in regular life, right? Like if you're, angry about something that is seemingly not a big deal, you're like, okay, like where is this coming from within me? So I remember first seeing that and being like, oh, like that's not like a huge deal. Um, but then it gets like really, really sketchy with like that mirror exercise thing, and it becomes they cross the line from into abuse, right? And then they're abusing people and they're like, well, mirror it, this is your fault, mirror it. And it's such a seemingly fine line between like, yes, taking accountability and responsibility for your own emotions and stuff, and then you cross over into that threshold of like now it's become like abuse.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, like in the spiritual community, like one of the main teachings that I think that every single person that goes into self-development with a spiritual lens, they come across that teaching where everything is one, and it's like the people that you're looking at, they're your mirror. Like they're just your mirror. So my understanding just from when I'm watching, like, oh yeah, like that's just where they either made that practice up, or maybe it is an existing practice out there that isn't exclusive to them, that they're using in their twin flame universe thing, which can be supportive unless you're already like quite literally in shock or in some form of trauma, like experiencing trauma. Because if you're experiencing trauma, telling yourself that it's all my fault continues to keep you stuck in the trauma. Like there is no healing involved. You are quite literally inflicting it over and over and over and over and over, with zero support, with zero, like, you're like literally under the water drowning, and there's like no way for you to like take a breath. There's no way for you to find some form of relief or release that you need. So again, like I do see like where they're coming from with this mirror practice, but I don't think there's any trauma informed lens whatsoever,
No.
nor is there disclaimer
Yeah.
offered anywhere on the site. 'Cause I know you and I like we're like, oh, okay, we need to understand what's really going on
Oh
here.
yeah, I read their blog for
Yeah.
sure.
We took a look at their YouTube, and I actually didn't even want to look at their YouTube. It's like, fuck, I don't even want to give them views because that's going to push them in the algorithm. But they're already on Netflix, so they're already getting that push. So little of me is not going to do much. So anyways, we did a little bit of researching. And yeah, there's zero disclaimers with a trauma informed lens. So, if you are experiencing some form of trauma and you are doing any type of mirror work or mirror exercises, especially if you're doing it on your own, especially if you're doing it with someone that has zero training, that is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, I remember looking at their blog and specifically looking for something that mentioned trauma, something, anything that like brought it up. And there was an incredibly brief, like it might have been like one paragraph that mentioned something about trauma. And it basically was like, if you feel mad or if you feel sad, you've experienced trauma or you're experiencing trauma or something.
Right,
And that was it, right? All it said was like, if you feel mad or if you feel sad. Like that was the basis of their like information on trauma. That's all that was there.
Wow. So like zero awareness or actual understanding of like what's happening with someone's eyes, what's happening with someone's tongues, what's happening in their body.
Yeah, and when the language is so basic and the information is so surface level, you just immediately know that there is no knowledge there. There's no training. They clearly haven't done enough of even their own work on themselves to even like understand and integrate that. And yeah, you can just tell like there's no healthy informed
Yeah.
knowledge.
I just think they just simply just do not have the training to be trauma informed enough. Because had you were, it would have been a lot more explicit, that's for sure. And then, yeah, I know like another part of their process, another thing that kind of like really stuck out with me was their map process, which I think was brought on by like a Marines or something like that. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was a woman who was like a ranking, I could have this wrong, a ranking officer in the US military or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like trained to do interrogations. I think that's what it was. Like she was like the head of like in something like that. Something really intense.
High up there.
High up there and like psychologically trained.
Yeah.
And she was the one who was running this map process that quite literally takes people into an unconscious state to reprogram their mind via hypnosis. My assumption is hypnosis because that's kind of how you do it, but in a way that it gets them into a trance state so that they are reprogrammed to whatever outcome is at their mercy.
And what was really interesting about that is I remember watching on there, they said that when they were looking or trying to recruit new members, they were going into Facebook groups for people with PTSD or people
Right.
that were like
Oof,
healing
I
from,
forgot about that.
yeah, like mental illness and stuff. And they were specifically going into these groups targeting people who are already traumatized and trying to bring them into this like MAPS program.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, I forgot about that. Like my heart is like, oof. Yeah, like all this, like I'm actually like feeling it. Yeah, like everything that we're saying, like a lack of trauma informed, and then they're targeting people that are like in their PTSD that are like quite literally, suffering and like in it, like in it. That to me, not only like that to me is just super unethical.
Oh yeah, huge, big time.
Oh my God. Like at that point, like you are quite literally becoming the predator.
Yeah. And I think too, when like people in that state are so, they're so vulnerable, they're so moldable, because you pick someone, and what this program does, this Twin Flames universe, is it guarantees you all the happiness, all the love, all the healing, everything you could ever want in life. Like, we can give it to you, just like come to us. So they're, like you said, like they're being predators and like preying on these super super vulnerable people, and then offering them the entire world, and that's how they like continue to bring people in.
Yeah, that kiss of guarantee that you are going to find true love if you enter in our Twin Flames universe. And I think that was like that seal of guarantee is actually on their website still.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to like fact check us, go to their website. It guarantees twin flame true love, which is like, who the hell do you think you are to guarantee anybody true love?
Yeah. Or like, even I think any program can never 100% guarantee anything, really, especially love, right? Like, you can never go into any type of program that would guarantee 100% healing, or you're going to 100% fix like this one issue. Like, it's just not possible.
No, like there is one layer of doing like a satisfaction guarantee of like, hey, this is the problem that this specific course or this mentoring will help you with, but it's not true love. It's not like you're not going to feel like you're completely healed, but the one issue, the physical tangible issue that's in your life right now, like for example, if you're fighting with your ex, I'm going to give you a solution to help make that easy. help resolve conflict. I'm going to give you the tools to manage that. I'm going to help you regulate your nervous system so that you're not feeling like you're going to die when your partner comes to you with an issue. There's those types of guarantees. Not true love. Like, that just boggles my mind, the audacity to even put that in writing.
Yeah, and you mentioned before we started filming too that the only person that can guarantee true love is like God.
Exactly.
But
And I mean that.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is like in the docu-series, she her name was like Shaleia, was the woman in this like that was leading it. And she said that she had a dream that her twin flame was Jesus. Right? So like that's the narrative they're going with, right? Is like he is Jesus reincarnated, and he can guarantee you, love and happiness and healing and all these things in the world.
And what I find so funny about this, because there's some more points we want to get into, but as we like watch the docu-series further, it's like they kind of bring you in I'm feeling in my body as I'm watching this, I'm feeling like the timeline of their success. Because if you look online, their Instagram following is over 40,000 people. Their YouTube, I think, has over 12,000 people. Who knows what their mailing list has? So, like, they have an established business. And it kind of shows somewhat of them, like, the timeline of them going through their business. And the people that they interview, they say, like, oh, I've been here this amount of time. And then they bring in someone else that's been, like, a shorter time. So it kind of goes with the timeline of them kind of growing in success. And at that point, when she had that dream, I honestly feel like she might believe it because of possibly the success that they've been having, the direction that he's been providing and helping grow their business. When you're in that lifestyle, this is from my observation because I've watched a lot of movies in my time and read a lot of books and been around many different I've actually like met like millionaires, like multi-billionaires I used to work at Rogers, for anyone that doesn't know me. Rogers cell phone wireless.
This is not an ad.
This is not an ad, but and the specific location that I used to work at that is no longer existing was downtown Winnipeg. So it's in the Exchange. So it was like underground. And this is like the connection of all of these big skyscrapers. Well, kind of big for our city.
Yeah, Winnipeg big.
Winnipeg big. So I would meet like really interesting people, like from just all walks of life. But my main clientele ended up being these businessmen, and a lot of them were actually billionaires. Like Winnipeg actually has a lot more money than we give it credit for because it doesn't really get flashed around. So anyways, I met a lot of people like that. So a lot of these businessmen that were like millionaires, billionaires, are just, driving like the newest Tesla at the time, which was like non-existent in our city. One of them actually drove like a Rolls-Royce Ghost. I think there's only like 3 of them in the country or something like that. So like really high up there. And the way that they would perceive themselves was like they thought they were God. And not just like a God, like part of being a divine being, and that viewing all humanity as godlike and divine in God's creation, but as the God. And I started to feel and notice that as they progressed in the show, such that, I think there was some clips of him showing like, oh, this is my life right now. We got this kind of bag and this kind of Chanel
The
and
cars and the house and everything. Yeah.
yeah, and like they just started to get more flashy about it, and it had that same kind of aura and that same kind of feel. So I'm not surprised that she had that dream, or maybe which is something they made up. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if she actually believed that because of the way that their life was going and the type of influence that they were creating in their little Facebook twins flame universe.
I think it could be really easy for someone when they get into the spiritual community and there's this talk about abundance, manifesting, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
all of that, right? And then you start this business and then abundance, manifesting, everything starts to come to you, right? And you have
Mhm.
this big house and you have all the nice things, and of course you must be doing it right, and of course, you must be doing God's work,
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call it, because everything is seemingly working out for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like it could be really easy for someone to get that view like twisted, especially over time,
Yeah.
and then cross from like, maybe somebody is trying to do something good. And then over time, it just gets like twisted and
Oh yeah.
distorted until it becomes really toxic. But yet you still think you're doing good because look at all this abundance that I have. I must be doing something right.
Yeah, that is intoxicating. I actually have a pinned reel right now on my Instagram. I'm not gonna unpin it. So if this comes up when someone's listening to this, I highly recommend watching it. There's just one point that I want to highlight is that these teachings in spirituality and manifestation, which I've actually had an interesting relationship. There was like one point that was my gateway into spirituality, like The Secret. That was my little gateway, and I saw instant coincidence synchronicities, right? I saw these things happening and these manifestations that were like instantaneous, like, oh my god, this is true, this is real, this is amazing. And you do kind of get this like mentality of like, wow, if I can do that, I can do anything. I must be like divine, right? Which can, like I said, it can be intoxicating because if you're only looking at it from that lens, it becomes incredibly selfish and self-absorbed and actually narcissistic. And in this reel that I'm referencing, there's a point that says if you are going into these teachings, you can become that way if you're not worshiping the divine in other. And I highly like this is something that I've had to learn a bit of, not the hard. I wasn't really abusing or hurting anyone or anything like that, but I just noticed the quality of my relationship started to deteriorate, and I quite literally felt the separation. I'm like, oh, like the whole reason why I wanted to go into these spiritual practices was to feel more whole and beautiful, not only with myself but with the people around me. Like, what's going on here? And I had to really get honest with myself, and I realized like, it's yeah, like I'm not doing it right. I'm just not doing it right. So what I'm saying is that for anyone that is in that realm, you need to practice worshiping the divine in other. And this is what I just love about sacred sexuality, because that is a big piece of the practices. And that's my observation with these two. Like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah. I think it's a trap that everyone gets caught in.
Yeah.
That thinking that you are pedestaling yourself,
Mhm.
right? Once you get into these like, the spiritual practices and healing and all of that, and I've been caught in it too, where you're like, I'm so healed. I am on a pedestal, and
Mhm.
you're down here.
Yeah. And
Um
if you're not doing what I'm doing, you're down here.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're like, I'm doing all these things, and you're not, and I'm healing, and I'm so spiritual, and I'm like meditating every day, and
I've been there. I remember having to do at least 1 hour meditation every single morning. And if it didn't happen, I would hate myself, first of all. Like, my whole day was ruined. And if no one else that was like, for example, if my partner wasn't doing it, if like I couldn't get my son to do it, then there was something wrong with them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think, like I said, I would say it's a trap that almost everyone gets caught
Yeah.
in. And at some point, for some, and some people stay in that trap, right? And they can't get out of it. Like these people, I think that we're talking about, they're in like I am God, I'm on a pedestal kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when you kind of realize that you're in it, it's a real kick in the face.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it really like puts you in your place. And like I remember when I realized it was actually like in an ayahuasca ceremony, interestingly enough. And it literally I know it's so weird, but like it was a complete like shutdown. Like you are this big, like you need to calm down
Yeah.
and just take a seat because you know so little,
Hmm.
is how I felt with it. And I was just like, whoa, like so humbling. So so humbling.
Yeah. Yeah, there was that other, like, oh my God, there's so many points we want to cover. The divine dish.
I can't even like think about that without laughing.
I know. I think the sad part of it, though, like, it was just a really, really sad part as to why their whole reasoning, their why behind doing it was, I think there were people in the twin flame universe that were complaining about feeling out of body. And the people that they were interviewing, they're the ones who are sharing this experience. And I remember her saying that she was feeling out of body, but a big piece of that is like her relationship with her quote unquote twin flame that they helped her twin flame with. Um, like they weren't getting along, and like she didn't feel like this relationship was ever right to begin with.
She didn't feel safe in it either. That was a big one too. Like it was that like a toxic or like abusive dynamic or something was going on
Yeah,
there.
there's a lot more definitely going on there. And she would express this to them, but they would continue to tell her like, that's your twin flame. You better mirror that. You better do that mirror practice we told you how to do. And so now I don't know how long this was, but this is for sure maybe months, years. I don't remember how long the timeline for her relationship, but it was some time into the relationship. And she's complaining about this out of body feeling. And their solution, rather than being trauma informed and helping her get back into her body in a somatic way, they're telling her to eat fattening, meaty foods so that she is grounded. Their whole thing was helping her to eat grounding foods, which there is a lot of truth in that. So this is the really fascinating things that they did. A lot of the things that there are some truth to it. However, it's nuanced. Like all of us, our human experiences are nuanced. You can't just blanket cover it up with eating fatty, meaty foods to help you feel better.
Yeah, the one thing that when I watched that is I don't know if it was their intent or if it was just kind of like a side effect of this whole like divine dish thing that they had going on, but the people that participated in it said how they gained like a ton of weight on it.
Right.
They gained so much weight, and I was like, well, of course, because now these people that are running this Twin Flames universe are just further destroying these people's like sense of self-worth and their self-esteem and how they see themselves. So to me it was just like another aspect of like just further degrading them as people.
Yeah, and I remember like watching just the people that they kept interviewing, and they have occasional clips of the people that are in meetings, because the women that they're interviewing, they have, access to the things that they were provided, right? So they have some of the teachings and courses. So they have legitimate proof of a lot of the things that they were saying, which are really dark to actually catch on video. And you can gradually see them actually gain weight. Like you see their cheeks gain some meat and like their shapes, and that in itself already affects your hormones. That already affects your, like you said, your self-esteem, the way you think about yourself, just so many different factors of that. And another thing that I can't remember his name. Jeff, right? Jeff, the man. So there's like the Jesus, Jesus Jeff. This is just so crazy. I remember him even addressing the weight gain, and him even saying like, oh, ever since what's her name? Shaleia. Ever since Shalea's gained weight, I love her even more.
One thing that you brought up with, we got to see like actual video of them in meeting. One thing that I thought was super uncomfortable and awkward was how openly they made people talk about their sex life with their twin flame partner in front of like groups. Like they'd be in these groups and they would ask them like really like confronting questions like, are you having sex, or do you enjoy having sex, like what's your sex life like, and just like I just feel so bad for those people, because to have those like really deep, like intimate conversations, and you can tell that they're uncomfortable having it, and they're being grilled by Jesus Jeff on these like topics in front of this group of people. And it's so, I don't know, it's bullying for one, and it's just like a really, really uncomfortable place to put people in.
Yeah, like not everyone is comfortable talking about their sex life. I highly recommend people get comfortable, so I'm a little biased, obviously my background. However, in the context of Twins Flames universe, it is a form of control. You know, make sure the people that are in your universe tell you every little thread so that you can coach them on every single thread, so that it can line up to the narrative that you want them to be a part of, so that they feel that intimate and connected with you. Because as soon as you talk about things like that, like you immediately are bonded with that person. Like the deeper and more intimate things you talk about with someone, you create bonds, right? And it doesn't matter what it is, the more you open up, it's there. So, and these two are like already in this position to be like, they've created like this pedestal for themselves. So it's just creating more of that like weird dynamic. Like, I don't know, like I just get like such Stockholm syndrome vibes from the whole thing.
Oh, and another thing that Jesus Jeff said was like talking about how like if your man wants sex, you have to give him sex.
Oh,
Like no
right.
matter if you don't want to, it doesn't matter if you know, you're not into it, maybe whatever the reason is, like it doesn't how the woman feels does not matter. If your man wants sex, you have to give him sex. And I was like, that is just a recipe for sexual trauma. Like we've kind of discussed on the podcast before, like sexual trauma, and like you're just traumatizing people, and like sexual abuse and all of that, and like that to me was like super, super toxic, and I was like, whoa, that is bad.
Yeah, and this is kind of why I'm going to keep saying like I feel like they're getting into specifically divine feminine and divine masculine teachings and just like at the surface with it. Like I feel like they during their twin flame come up they started to dive into like divine masculine and divine feminine teachings, because if you take it for surface level, there is a little bit of context that kind of sound has that tone where the masculine leads, which Jesus Jeff would claim he's the masculine, and Shaleila,
Shalia.
Shaleia, I can't. It's like it's a made up name. I'm sorry, I can't. They claim they also. I just want to highlight this. They also say in the documentary series that she did make up the name, so that's why I'm saying that. Okay, it's true. I swear. It's a made up name. It's hard to say. Oh yeah. So like, if you look at it from that lens, the masculine leads and the feminine surrenders. At a very surface level, that is what they're regurgitating. But when you actually go into these teachings, and it's especially when you're looking at from like a lens of sexuality, because that's like where a lot of these teachings, like people like to integrate into their relationships, because when you pull apart your own inner masculine and feminine and you embody one or the other with your partner, you become magnets, and it's just that much more juicy. So these are really real things you can play with. But when you haven't actually practiced it or even understand it at a, relational level, it becomes incredibly dogmatic and is incredibly rigid, and you stop viewing this innocent person in front of you as a human being. And it becomes a point where it's like, no, you are going to listen to me because I'm Jesus Jeff and I'm the masculine in this relationship, Shalila. Just leave it. I cannot say her name. I'm not going to try anymore. Shaleila?
Shalia.
Shaleia. Okay, Shaleia. Shaleia. I'll be respectful. Shaleia. And when you actually understand trauma and human beings and the way the nervous system works and the way our sexual organs and genitals and reproductive shit works and actual orgasm works, for the woman, aka if you want to, which the woman can embody both, so let's make that very clear, if you want to embody your divine feminine during sexual intercourse, then you move at the speed of your turn on. There is no like, oh, my masculine told me to. I'll tell you right now, your vagina will not work. Your vulva will not work. Sex just will not be a good time for anybody, because if there's no pleasure for one, there's no pleasure for either. At that point, you're not having pleasurable sex, you're having rape.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I know you love this topic, is the concept of, and they teach this in Twin Flames universe, that you either 100% masculine or 100% feminine. What are your thoughts on that, Chelsy?
Oh my God. This is something that I've also seen online. This isn't the first time I've heard this before, but when it was on this, I'm like, holy fuck. Like, this needs to get killed. Like, murdered. So there's a lot of trigger words in this episode.
So, like, as someone who is like really unfamiliar with, you know, the world of like feminine, masculine, polarity, sexuality, stuff like that, when I was seeing these things online, what you see from a very naive perspective is you have to be like, men have to be 100% in their masculine and women have to be 100% in their feminine. And if you're not in your feminine, men won't be attracted to you. And if you're not in your masculine, women won't be attracted to you. And I remember like getting into this and you're like, okay, you're learning. All right. All right. And then suddenly it just doesn't start, like something's not adding up. Right. Because, and my knowledge is limited, but of course you have both energies within you. Right. And from a healthy place, you should be able to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like shift in between the feminine and the masculine. We can't just function in the feminine, for example, right? Because we live in a society that values structure and schedules, and you have to do those things to get through life. So you literally can't just be in the feminine all the time. It just doesn't work. But a lot of these teachings that you see online is literally like women should just be baking in the kitchen, like wearing sundresses and just like being pretty and flowy and just all the time. And like, that's all there is to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll even challenge that narrative. Even if, let's say, I was a housewife and I had 3 kids, okay? When you're a parent, it is actually dangerous to be 100% in your feminine. There is zero authority you have with your kids, which you need in order to keep them safe. You need to be in your masculine to protect your children. You need to have schedules for your kids to get them to school on time. So my big grievance with a lot of these teachings that I've personally seen online, and actually did a little bit of research in the women specifically that I've seen, what I'm referencing right now, they don't have any kids. So maybe that works for them. But I would almost challenge like, oh, okay, how's your business going? Is your business running? Is someone else running your business for you? Because you need to have, like you mentioned, you need to have, masculine energetic or a masculine framework within your own being to get shit done, to be on time, to have a schedule, to, do a lot of 3D things. And what is something that's really funny, and I'm sure anyone can relate to this, if you actually, know any super spiritual people, they probably don't get a lot done on time. They're probably late.
They're in flow.
They're in flow, which is a feminine energetic, lacking that masculine framework. So my short answer is that's all fucking bullshit. My more real, another way to look at this, if you know any men in your life, which they're probably pretty stoic, but if you know any men in their life, do they have feelings? Yes. They may show them differently, but feelings, the feeling body, emotion, those are all feminine energetics. So to say that a man is 100% masculine is to say he's a robot, which just simply isn't true. And in my opinion is toxic mindset.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you are like suppressing either aspect of yourself, like for example, if a man is suppressing the feminine within him, like that's not gonna get you anywhere good. We of course we know like suppressing any aspect of yourself is just going to create dysfunctional patterning and poor behaviors. And I'm also curious about your perspective on like the whole concept of like as within so without. So if we're suppressing the feminine within ourselves, would that manifest then in the collective? And then looking back on history, we've seen, of course, the suppression of women over hundreds, thousands of years. My guess is it's probably related to that aspect of like suppressing the feminine within ourselves. And it has manifested over these hundreds and thousands of years in the collective, in the suppression of women.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why if you hear online any mention of the patriarchy, that is the paradigm that it's created. The patriarchy has created this like hyper masculine persona, this hyper masculine paradigm, such that, emotions are frowned upon. Having any type of empathy just isn't a thing. Frowning upon intuition and leaning more into like planning and organization and metrics, which is all needed. So there is no shame to it. It's just understanding that there is balance that is truly needed for us to actually feel whole and fulfilled and joyful in life. Like a big thing, because of this like Jesus Jeff persona and like him being in his masculine, there was no challenging him. And if you did challenge him, and there actually it was, I'm pretty sure there was a clip of it in the Netflix documentary of Jeff actually saying that, if you're challenging me, no, you have to do a mirror practice now.
One thing that I found really alarming was them encouraging like law breaking and like stalking and the like the literal concept of doing whatever you have to do to like get your twin flame. So the context around this was a lot of these people in these groups thought that they had met their twin flame, but this quote unquote twin flame wasn't interested in them. So these people in twin flames universe were encouraged to do anything to get these people to be with them and like be relentless in this. And there was an example of one woman who had gone so far as to like she had had a restraining order placed against her from this like so-called twin flame, this person she thought was her twin flame, and ended up breaking the restraining order, ended up in jail. And then while she's in like a group chat in Twin Flames universe, she's like telling the story about how she ended up in jail. And Jesus Jeff responded and was like, "Are you a criminal or are you a spiritual master?"
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is so wild. It's like he's trying to, because again, like it's all coming from spiritual teachings. And this is what drives me insane, because these teachings are like life changing and really, really beautiful and supportive. And they're using it as a form of control. But yeah, I remember that part with that woman, and she was actually interviewed in the show. Um, and yeah, like it just like her life just kept progressively getting more dark and more alone and just like separated from family, and getting the restraining order, and she would continuously text this guy and he would tell her to stop, and like she would go to the twin flame universe and Jesus Jeff and Shaleia and they would tell her, no, do your mirror work and da 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 da, and just like zero support, zero care, compassion. It was all in like kind of like coming back to this like guarantee that they had for them to like find that twin flame, and as long as you did exactly what we do, like we tell you to do, then it'll happen. It doesn't matter if you go to prison. It doesn't matter if you get a record.
Actually, this brings me back to a thing that I was reading on their blog about this topic. And this blog post, it was written that if you thought someone was your twin flame and they didn't believe you, or they didn't know, or they didn't want anything to do with you, it was just because they were stupid. And like literally, right. I kid you not, in this blog post, it used the word like buffoon. Like they were like calling these other people like buffoons.
Oh my
like,
God.
they didn't know because they were just stupid, because they weren't like, spiritual enough, or like whatever it is. And I just picture this, like, from an energetic standpoint, I picture like just these dark little tendrils like trying to latch onto people from the outside and like just like continue to pull them in.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I just remember reading that on the blog and just like being blown away by it.
I'm so happy you read that blog. I didn't read it. Yeah, it's all to push this narrative, and it's frustrating because when you already have an abandonment wound, when you already have this like not enough feeling, or like I am broken, like there's something wrong with me, when someone is promising that ultimate gem of true love with twin flame union, then you'll listen to that because you already think there's something wrong with you. You already think that you're broken. And I say this, I feel like I almost say this every episode. There's nothing fucking wrong with you. You're not broken. And no one else can do anything for you that you can't do for yourself.
Yeah, and it kind of, we've talked a little bit about this before, but this idea of like pedestaling love. Love is like as the end all be all, and love and being in a relationship with someone or being a soulmate or a twin flame will
Let me just like highlight twin flames are not true.
the one thing we haven't mentioned is even like we haven't defined exactly what it is believed that a twin flame is.
Oh, right.
So the concept behind this twin flame thing is that you are half a soul and they are half a soul, and together you are like one soul,
Yeah.
which I think is just such fucking bullshit because you're not half, you are a soul. Like you are one, you are whole yourself. And to have someone tell you that like you are incomplete on your own is just, it's ridiculous. And this is what perpetuates this like this whole twin flame thing, right? Is like you are incomplete. In order to be whole and healed and loved, you have to like find the other half of your soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you already have that core imprint of I am not enough, and abandonment because something happened with your parents and you never got the love and care and protection and guidance that you needed in order to, develop a secure attachment, then you're going to have this like this unsettled feeling in your nervous system always until you're in relationship. And even then you can't sustain the relationship because that feeling isn't going to be completed. Like it's not going to do what you need to be done, your own inner work. And my own core belief, and again, everyone can have their own beliefs. My belief is that we have many soulmates. I don't think that there's one specific twin flame. I actually think it's a load of shit, twin flames. Because if you actually go into a lot more um, esoteric teachings, there is a teaching that the twin flames actually exist within you. And it is the divine feminine, the divine masculine in you. And another like aspect of like kind of what Jesus, Jeff, and Shaleia are doing is abusing sexual polarity teachings of divine feminine and masculine, because how those teachings work is you already are coming into sexual relationship, an intimate relationship with someone, knowing that you have both aspects inside of you, and then deliberately embodying feminine or masculine. It doesn't matter your physical genitalia. You actively choose one or the other to create intense sexual polarity so that you can experience God embodied in sex, having those epic fucking juicy orgasms by just recreating that intentionally. Not because you find your divine twin flame randomly on the street, or you stalk your ex because he has to be your twin flame because you can't stop thinking about him and you don't realize that you have an anxious attachment.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought up the concept of like soulmates, because I hold the same belief that like also think twin flames are bullshit. As someone who's like been through it and been brainwashed by it, the concept is bullshit. But I do also believe in like soulmates or soul family.
Yeah.
So I read a book one time and it was called Journey of Souls, and it's about this. He's a hypnotherapist who hypnotizes people into their life between lives.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So once you're in that, like you're not reincarnated or you're not incarnated, but you're in the soul world.
Yeah.
And he's found like through his work that typically you kind of belong to like a little soul family. And you have people that you for the most part will like reincarnate with like life over life, and you meet these people. It might be like a dad, or it might be a brother, or it might be like a best
Right.
friend,
Yeah.
or it could even be people that come into your life for a very short period of time that actually kind of change the trajectory of your life, or at one point just offer like, maybe it's a really influential mentor or something
Exactly.
like that. But we get attached to this idea of, this person's my soulmate, I have to be with them forever,
Yeah.
because we can't just like let those people like come in and come out and play their role in our lives. We can't, and like learn the lessons from
Yeah.
them, and we just try and like hold on to those relationships because of this concept you see in
Hmm.
society and the internet, that like, this is your soulmate, you have to be with them forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like the concept of like soulmates, soul family, but also understanding that people will come in and out of your life, and not having like so much attachment to like, this is your one true love and without them you'll never be happy.
Exactly. And I also want to recommend another book for anyone that's curious on attachment systems. It's called Mother Hunger. And it actually explains how attachments are created. And it all begins from infancy, even far back as your womb, but more so infancy, where, like an infant requires the mother's nervous system in order to regulate their nervous system and form those healthy bonds and healthy attachments. And if for whatever reason, as early as infancy, a time where we can't even remember, even though you can through meditations and actual shamanic journeys to journey back to those times to understand and actually heal those relationships. So I just want to share that that's possible. But it really highlights how our attachment system in our bodies, our nervous systems is created. So whether it be in infancy, whether it be in early childhood years, whether it be in our teenage years, something maybe horrific happened, our attachment systems will either be anxious, avoidant, insecure. And my opinion, this whole twin flame thing is quite literally like it is developed and emphasized and like just like exaggerated because of people's attachment systems. And the thing is, you're not cognitively aware of this. So even if you are an advanced spiritual teacher, aka Jesus, Jeff, and Shaleia, or project yourself as one, and you have a narrative of twin flames already in your ideas, and you maybe have some form of attachments, like for example, anxious attachment, because I guarantee they have something going on.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I don't know. It's all projection on my side. I don't know them, never met them. If you don't have a secure attachment, you're gonna relate to your love that way,
Yeah.
whatever that is. And the thing about soulmates, like my opinion, like yes, we have soul family, we have all of that, but I also believe like I feel like quite literally when it comes to our love relationships, I feel like we have many soulmates. Like I've had more than one deep, meaningful lover in my past, and I don't know if it's going to change or not, but like had I believed that I only had one twin flame, I would have thought my life was doomed because two of them are no longer living. What does that mean for me? You know what I mean? What does that mean? I'm fucked? Like, no love for me? I'm broken? I need to myself or something? Like how twisted is that? There's no room for love anymore. And how depressing is that?
Yeah, so when you were talking about like attachment patterns and stuff, I know that's exactly what happened to me. So when I went through it, like I have previously, and I've done a lot of work on this, but like anxious avoidant attachment. So yeah, that's exactly what happened to me, and this is what led me into a dynamic where someone was able to give me like just
Mm-hmm.
enough, and then pull away, and then that
Mm-hmm.
anxious attachment style kicks in, and you're like grasping for it,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, like 100%. I of course like don't know these people in this situation either, but I would say there's gotta be something there that is like creating some sort of wound that they're looking to fill that void,
Yeah.
or they're getting caught in those attachment patterns.
Yeah, and then projecting that on the business that they've created off of a spiritual teaching, quote unquote spiritual teaching that already exists, that already who knows how many people now have already known or aware of it, and then they create a whole business off of it, which is just, a little alarming. And now, if we already thought it was red flag city,
Red Flag City.
Red flag city, red flag city.
Red Flag City, bitch.
It gets worse.
Yeah, it gets way worse.
Oh my God, it gets worse. And I don't even know how to start this, but let me just say, I think anyone will notice that when you start into self development or even just any spiritual community, when it comes to like groups online, the predominant, I guess, gender would be women. And I know there was a rule eventually, like they shared on the Netflix series, that they shared that your twin flame can only exist in our group.
Yeah, so I remember why they did that, and it was because they weren't having a success rate.
Right.
It's because there wasn't enough people finding their twin flame.
Right.
So of course it was affecting their business because they weren't giving people a 100% guarantee that you were going to find your twin flame.
Right.
So yeah, that's when they changed that rule, been like, "Oh, your twin flame is actually in the group. It's not outside, they're just in the group." Um and in this group was mostly women.
Yeah.
So then this narrative begins where Jesus Jeff channels.
Oh yeah, and they stated that only them, Jesus, Jeff, and Shaleia, had this magic ability to channel and find and like know the name of your twin flame.
Yeah. So there was this part in there where I guess Jesus, Jeff, and Shaleia had like channeled all of these like twin flame pairings within this group, and they started pairing like women together. And
Yeah,
then,
because they didn't have enough men already, so they pull names out of their ass, put them on a list, and present it to this group.
yeah, and then even though like lots of these women were straight, and Jesus Jeffs claimed that he could tell that one of them was the divine masculine and one of them was the divine feminine, even though like these women were like, no, like I'm a woman, I'm feminine, and basically were pushed and abused into admitting and conforming to being the divine masculine. And with that came transitioning into being men. They had to be more masculine. So they had to cut their hair, they had to wear different clothes, they had to like start acting like men. And even in the very end, you see, I think there was just one of them or maybe a couple of them actually went through with like gender reassignment surgery.
Yeah. Yeah, like it progressed very quickly. In the show, and I'm sure I don't even know the timeline at that point, but like it got incredibly culty and telling people, how they should show up in relationship and show up in the world. And from what it looked like on Netflix, it looks like these people listened to because of what they were being told. So again, there is like this layer of like discernment goggles of having on, of knowing, because if you look at who's being interviewed, you do see it is like one of them was the woman who went to jail and now I think has a criminal record. I don't remember if the charges got dismissed or not. Another one was a mom and her daughter, and they no longer, and a twin sister, a mom and a twin sister, and the sister is now with Twin Flame Universe even to this day, and she refuses to have contact with this family. So you have to understand the family dynamics and where like a lot of this information is coming from. However, that is extreme. Where people are going through gender assignment surgery, and it even show like you can even go on YouTube and find the videos of them talking about their gender assignment surgery. So it is not like them claiming I'm the divine masculine and I have female reproductive organs. It's like, nah, like I got my top surgery and now I'm claiming I'm the divine masculine. So there is also another disclaimer that I want to highlight again with divine masculine and feminine teachings, even though we touched it a little bit, like this divine feminine masculine teachings at a spiritual aspect and sexual polarity aspect in itself, like that is a whole course and masterclass itself. But a core thing that I want to share is that divine feminine masculine, it's a gender principle, but it doesn't mean that you have a penis or a vagina. Like it's completely irrelevant from what you look like externally. It's what you feel like in your heart. for you to like feel the other, and you do hold both. So it's like, just because I want to show up more in my masculine does not mean I'm going to grow a penis, or do I want to have a penis or get top surgery or anything like that. It has nothing to do with my physical body. It is an embodiment, is an energetic that we all hold and have. So I just want to make that very clear. So from what we're hearing in this show, it's that the narrative of you, if you are going to be divine masculine, you have to be the quote unquote appearance of a man in your relationship, and vice versa of the woman. You need to be more womanly looking, which whatever the fuck that even looks like. Like there isn't really, you have to look any certain way to be a woman. You know what I mean? So that's just fucking stupid. But so it got really, really dark. And that's when I was just bawling my eyes off. And again, like, you don't know how, like, where the truth is and where this, like how, like, the dynamics, you don't really know. But when you watch it, you're like, fuck. Like, did this happen? Is this happening? What's happening? How is this happening?
Yeah. One thing that I like that you brought up was like the isolation from family. Because anytime you learn about like cult or cult tactics or anything like that, that is key. Like they will isolate people from friends and family. And it's like, those people that you knew, they, I think they called it energy leaks.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in this docu-series, they said that if your friends or family or anyone in your life has an issue with Twin Flames universe, that is an energy leak and it has to be closed. And closing that energy leak meant cutting off all contact with them. And that's just like a classic cult tactic to isolate people. And then your new friends and family are only people that are in the cult, which gives Jesus, Jeff, and Shaleia, or cult leaders, or whoever, just like this
100% access and control.
Exactly. Yeah. 100% access, control, and the ability to abuse, manipulate, and do all of those things that are happening in this like docu-series.
Yeah. Oh my god. And I've also admittedly watched a lot of docu-series about cults in my day, and like, it's scary. Like, it is really, really scary, because like, your family, we have to understand, like, even if it is rocky, they don't have any like, they're not trying to get anything out of you. They're just your family. Unless obviously there are abusive families, which I've also been a part of, but at the end of the day, like, they're not trying to, like, there isn't really something that they're getting out of it. Like, it's just your family. And if, it is kind of rocky, like, I highly, highly encourage people to really look at those relationships, because once you, get over the conflict and out of the stickiness and even just like the pain of the past, like, that's your support system. Like, it really is. And they're going to be there for you, whether or not you get a change in your life. And when you don't have them, you look to strangers. You don't know anything about these strangers. You don't know what their narrative, or like what they want, like whatever, right? Like, it's just a lot more dangerous. And oh yeah, the energy leak part, like, there is truth about energy leaks. Like, if you are around people that just simply aren't supporting your way of thinking, then there is this kind of like crunchiness and this dissonance in your life, because you're having to constantly, explain yourself, or like show up a certain way, and that it is draining, quote unquote. It is an energy leak. However, cutting people off, especially if they're your family, unless they're like physically abusing you, is not the answer.
Yeah. One thing I noticed for sure is like when it comes to the terms like energy leak and abundance and manifestation and stuff, they use a lot of that like spiritual jargon that is super common, and that's kind of how you rope people in, right? Is you're seeing all this online, so they're
It's like,
using,
oh, I've heard it here, then there must be truth to it.
yeah, they're like, oh, and this isn't a big deal. This couldn't be like an insane cult for sure, because they're using the same language.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to like, they do use a lot of like common analogies and common language and stuff, and this is how like, and I'm sure a lot of cults are probably similar, maybe from a more like religious dogmatic perspective, because that's usually where the cult thing starts to happen. But yeah, I would imagine it's the same. They probably use a lot of the common terminology, a lot of the same words, and they make it sound nice and pretty, and before you know it, you're, in there with Jesus Jeff. You've cut off all of your family.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing to highlight that I'm trying to say, but I was hard to find the words. It's like when you're being told to cut off family, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
That's a fucking huge red flag. If you're being, for whatever reason, if you're constantly being gaslit, that's a red flag. If you're not feeling empowered and being, you know, being connected more to your heart, if you're constantly being told that you're wrong and listen to me, that's a red flag. Like there's just so many red flags. And again, if you have these attachment systems, first please become aware of your attachment system. And if you have core abandonment wounds and unworthiness wounds and not like these not enough wounds, then you will formulate this like Stockholm kind of relationship with this cult leader very easily. So even when you're in it and you have these things going on in yourself, it's so important to be aware, to be self-aware of what's moving through you so that you can identify, okay, I know that this is how I react and respond to these situations. Let me just like pause and like come back to my center and then reassess the situation. I think that could have supported a lot of these individuals.
Yeah, I would think too, like, if you don't have a view or experience with what healthy relationships look like, if you've never seen that before, you might go into something like this and think that it's normal.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't even recognize that this is unsafe, that I am being abused, that I am being gaslit, because to
Exactly.
you that's like all you know. You're like, "Oh, that's like totally normal."
That's okay.
Yeah,
They can
exactly.
talk to me like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's another way that people get like really roped into this stuff too, is just like if you come from a more chaotic, traumatic background, maybe like dysfunctional family, all of that, it might not put up a red flag for you.
Yeah.
When you're, on the internet and you're like looking at these like spiritual concepts, um, just using your discernment and probably checking into your body and seeing how it makes you feel. Um, is there are you getting this like super intense like heart rates coming up, and your mind isn't working, and you're like jittery and your nervous system's activating, because that's a red flag. And that's what happened to me was when I kind of like got involved, not in Twin Flames universe, but in my own
She's finally admitting it. Oh my god, it only took an hour.
but when I went through like my own experience with this, and had I gained more knowledge prior to around trauma bonding, around attachment patterns, around things like that, I probably wouldn't have gotten caught in it. Although, that's part of your journey, I guess. And it's hard to know what you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like I think it's super important for people to, learn their attachment systems, understand, their parental relationships from when they were younger and like, okay, like was it traumatic? Was it not traumatic? And a big thing that I think is super important to just for people to know at a self-responsibility level is that you're not broken. No course, no relationship, no mentor, no job, no amount of money is going to make you better or fix you.
Yeah. And to add on to that, you are not half a soul. You are whole on your own.
It may not feel like it sometimes, and that's the work.
Red flag city, bitch.
Red flag, red flag city bitch. Red flag city bitch.